All right, guys, welcome back to video 3. Today, for this video, you're going to need your pencil, sharp pencil, you're going to need your ruler, and you're going to need something to push away all the eraser marks that you might make. I prefer a brush, but you can also use a small piece of paper. So let's get started here. The next step in creating this blueprint is finishing the side walls. They're going to line up with the bottoms of the same bottom plate area and then the top plate. The side walls need to fit on our foundation, and the foundation that you will receive with your kit is this 4-inch by 12-inch piece of CDX plywood. Now, earlier in a video 2, we were talking about plywood that would go on top of the walls. This is not the plywood that would end up on the walls, but this is the actual plywood material on a real house that would end up being used for exterior wall paneling or walls, just not on our model project. Sorry to make that a little confusing. So this is the plywood that you'd put on a real house, but not on our model project. I wanted you to have a little piece of it to be able to examine it and learn a little bit about it. And so this is called CDX plywood. And what this means is that you have one side of it that's graded C. You have one side of it that's graded D. And then the X is exterior. If you look at the glue joints between the layers, this is a 4-layer plywood. So this is equivalent to what we would call half-inch plywood. This would tell you that the dark glue line means it's exterior. If it's an interior plywood, you'd have a white glue line and it would kind of blend in. You wouldn't really see it. But here we have an obvious dark glue line here, which makes the layers really easy to distinguish. And you'll also notice that the layers are kind of smooth and then rough and smooth and rough. And that's because the layers, when plywood's put down, they put the grain down so that you have layers going in one direction, then you have a sheet that'll be glued on in a different direction, then a sheet in a different direction, and then another sheet in a different direction again, so that the outside layers look like it's going in the long direction of the plywood, but the interior are actually different directions so that it's more stable. It's not as easily broken, and it makes it a much stronger engineered product that way. So this is to scale. A typical slab on-grade foundation, meaning concrete that's put on the dirt to set your house on top of, is going to be a minimum of a 4-inch thick slab. So with our scale of 1/8 inch equals 1 inch, that would mean that in order to have 4 inches, we would need 4/8, and 4/8 is equal to a 1/2 inch. So this 1/2 inch thick piece of plywood is to scale for a 4-inch thick concrete slab. If you decide to, before we start building our models, paint this piece of plywood gray to make it look more like a concrete slab, you're welcome to do that. If you would like to color it somehow or stain it somehow so that it's gray, you can do that as well. This is going to represent our concrete. At some point, we will need to sand it and clean it up a little bit. I will instruct you on how to do that later. I'm going to ask that you don't do that now because I don't want you to round over any of the corners. I will teach you how to do that later so that it doesn't mess up your model house project. It's important that the corners are still square. They don't have to be sharp, but they have to be square. In addition, we want to make sure that the model house fits on it. So you can see that this is the same width as the model, which is good because this is actually going to be right underneath the model, and the model wall is going to sit on top of this. So that's what we want. But now the other two walls that are going to sit here need to also fit on this with the 2x4 wall. So if this is the bottom plate of our 2x4 here wall, the other walls need to fit on the remainder of this foundation. Okay, so the difference here that we have left, if this is 4 inches and this is just under a 1/2 inch, we could call this, we'll call it a 1/2 inch for the sake of this, we're a difference of a 1/16 here. That makes this 3.5 left over, right? So we're going to take our ruler and we're going to start measuring everything out. I'm gonna just put a little bit of line on here, actually real quick, so we can confirm. So 3.5 will end up coming to right there. That leaves about a 16th. That's pretty good. So, all right, let's try this. So, I also need to now make sure that where the double top plate overlaps and interlocks up on top of each other, we have to remove some of the material for that and leave a gap to show that here in between the walls. So I'm going to leave, well, let's just say 3/4 of an inch. We're going to bring it back 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to start a mark here that's 3/4 of an inch over. We'll start another mark over here. It's 3/4 of an inch over. And from there, I can put my first line coming all the way down, okay? And that'll be the edge of that wall. And then we're going to do whatever we do here, we'll do it in reverse over here on the other side in a mirror image. So this wall needs to have a bottom plate that is, we said, 3.5 inches long. So let's go ahead and draw that. So there's 3.5. And then I also want to draw this top plate, which I'm using my ruler to line up to the other top plate. As long as they're parallel, this will work out just fine. Okay, so there's a 3.5 inch bottom plate. Now I can't just draw this line willy-nilly because I'll probably end up at an angle. So from where I am at 3.5, I'm going to mark, this makes me 1.25 inches here. So I'm going to put my 1.25 inch mark up here. So I can keep my ruler and everything nice and square, put my pencil back on that mark. I'll pivot from that point, and then I can draw this line here. That gives me this bottom plate. Now we need to make these two studs. So to make this stud, we got to come in 3/16. We got to come in 3/16 from this one. Just do them both at the same time. And then we're going to use this line here to draw the top plate. The double top plate. Well, I'll do that one in a minute. I'll show you why. I don't want to confuse you guys because otherwise I'll be doing two different things at once and it might get a little confusing to you guys. So this stud needs to come all the way down at 3/16. This stud here, all the way down 3/16 thick. Parallel lines, okay. Now we also need to have, from the outside edge, we want to have our 2-inch mark. So I'm going to come over from the outside, 2 inches and 3/16. Come over from the outside, 2 inches and 3/16, just as if I'm hooking my tape measure on the outside of this wall here. Okay. We want to build this just like we would build it out in the field as best we possibly can, even though we're doing this in a small simulated scale. Okay, so this double top plate now, this plate needs to overlap to that wall there. So what we need to do, by the thickness of this wall, which we know the wall thickness based on our scale, and knowing that the stud's 3.5 inches, our studs this way are 3/16, but our stud this way is going to be 7/16. And you can do the math yourself. It's just under a 1/2 inch. So I need to come out beyond this point, 7/16. Okay. I'm going to actually line my ruler up here so that I can come from here out 7/16. come out this other top one here. 7/16. Okay, so that's good. This line here needs to go away because that's actually not there. So this top plate will overlap, which means we need to take this one back by 7/16 so that it has a place to sit on top of. Okay, so this is a very small line, and the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to look at the distance between the ruler here and the ruler here, and I will make that parallel. As long as this is consistent in the image here and here, if the distance of the ruler to the line, we can say that's probably pretty good. And then I'm going to leave my ruler there while I erase to use it as a shield. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just use the little eraser as a ruler and the eraser together. A nice clean look. Okay, so this wall, when it's flipped over behind this wall, will then lock on top there and overlap. So now we just need to do the exact opposite over here, and then we'll have to put in our corners, whatever our corners are going to be. Okay, so let's repeat the process. We were 3/4 of an inch away from the wall. Three-quarters of an inch away from the wall. Notice I never lifted my pencil there. I left it and used it as a point to rotate from. I drew that line all the way across. I still will need to come out. This is going to have to get cut back by this much, and this is going to get brought in by this much. So if I do this here, this is a really wide gap. It's hard to judge this. I'm going to have to do this one left-handed or flip the paper over. You can only really use this trick if this is a narrow gap. It makes it really easy to see, to line this up. Okay. So that's been cut out now for the other house part to receive it. We're going to come down here, and I'm going to make this wall 3.5. We're going to come up to this line, and I'm using the bottom plate of the main wall to line up my ruler to make sure everything is consistent. And this should still look nice and parallel. If you got a little bit off or something got a little funky, you need to do some measuring with 2 points and fix it here. So I have, from this edge of the paper, I've got 2 5/16. Sorry, I was wrong. I got 1 5/16. I'm going to do the same thing up here. 1 5/16. Your measurement, if your wall was in a different spot, could be a little different than my measurement. The whole point is that you have a consistent measurement from the edge. That way you can draw this nice and square. Okay? And this line is a little overdrawn up top. We're going to do some erasing. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to turn my paper a little bit so I can do this since I'm left-handed on a ruler and right-handed with the pencil. I am going to line myself up with this top plate nice and even so I can hold my ruler firmly while I draw. And then we'll get the top of the top plate. And then we'll get the double top plate, which we need to extend out. We put a dot here earlier to this point. Remember, this is going to go away, so I'm going to erase that actually right now just to clean that up. Put that line back. And then get this bottom one here. And see how this is wider here than it is here? That's no good. I really need to make sure that this is nice and parallel. Okay? So you can, if you need to get a second ruler, you need to cheat with a measuring device of some sort, you can. You can even use a note card, okay? If you have a piece of paper and you just put your finger right there where the line is. I'm going to pinch this thing. I'll show you guys what I mean. Let's say I line this up with my ruler and I put my fingernail there. And I put my fingernail on it over here. And it's in the same spot. You know that you're pretty close to parallel, okay? There's a lot of little carpentry tricks you can use for stuff like that. I'm sure you guys can come up with some things of your own. Okay, so this wall is almost done. Now what we need to do is we need to add all the studs to it. I'm going to come in my 3/16. I come in 3/16 this way, and then from the outside of the wall, this time moving in the other direction, moving left, from the outside I'm going to put a mark 2 inches in, 1, 2, and 3/16 more. And let's come up here. I'll measure the same thing. Oh, I didn't get this last mark. Okay. So all right, so see this one line here, it's a little bit light. I'm going to trace it over one more time. Okay. So there are the walls. Hopefully you guys have all your walls done correctly where you have the middle and the outsides. We do need to still do our corners. And we're going to have two different types of corner posts put in here. I want to have a 3-piece corner on one side and a 4-piece on the other so you can practice both. So to do the 3-piece here, we're simply going to add one more stud in the, how do I explain this? So I wish I had a bunch of little short cutoffs of this. The corner post for this one is just going to have another stud inside the wall this way. And the 3-piece over here, that's going to make 3 because you're going to have this stud, and then this stud. That'll be a 3-piece. And then for the 4-piece, we're just going to add 2 more studs that are in the exact same orientation coming out. So this stud here will actually be pushed to the inside. It'll be flat to the back of the wall, inside the wall like this. And we could measure it over. Actually, since I got the stick here, I'm just going to use it since it's the right width or thickness. Oh, I did not hold that correctly. I'm trying to do this with opposite hands, and my right hand is not used to holding a ruler, and my left hand is not used to holding a pencil. But we'll fake it. Fake it till we make it, as they say. So something to. It's really important to have nice, clean hands when you're doing this kind of work, and to keep your drawing nice and neat. You don't want fingerprints. You don't want smudges and smears all over your work. This is an art form, and it needs to be really clean. Okay. So that's that wall over here, and then this one we just need to add 2 more studs in this orientation, and they'll end up making this corner post. You can also do this with your ruler by just measuring over 3/16 top and bottom. And you can do this with your ruler over here by measuring over 7/16 top and bottom and drawing your lines. That will complete your wall section. the next section will be the roof, and that'll be a separate video.